Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show, and today we have another spectacular guest on today. Every time I see these people come through, I get a lot of offers to be on the show, and I only select the people that I really feel like I'm going to get the most valuable conversation from. Some of this podcast is purely selfish because I'm looking for better questions to ask myself, to ask my kids, to ask my wife, so we can elevate ourselves. And so I'm trying to bring on the brightest minds from all different walks of life to find out what are they asking themselves, what's driving them, what's getting them in the zone here. So today we get to hear from Markus Kaulius. Such a cool name, almost as cool as Knickerbocker. No, I'm just kidding. It actually sounds like Marcus Aurelius a little bit. So Markus Kaulius, it's cool. So he's from his heritage is from Latvia, but he is it Latvia or Lithuania?
Lithuania. You got it.
I screwed it up before the podcast. So Lithuania, but he's the founder and builder of multiple businesses, 8 and 9 figure big businesses. One of the reasons I bring him on here is because he's got this identity, which is a business book, and he's really a movement that he's creating of playing a bigger game. How do you get out of the small-minded thinking and go larger? And one of the videos I just posted on, well, I guess it's been last week, I did a little docu-series of my life. And one of the main questions that I highlight in that docu-series is the thing that I would have told myself when I was younger. One of the things that I would have counseled myself when I was younger. And the thing was, dream as big as you can. That's the first step. Dream as big as you can, and then go find somebody who thinks that your dream is small. And the reason for that is not so they can poo-poo on your dream, because no big dreamer poo-poos on somebody else's dream. That doesn't happen. But you want to find somebody after you have stretched your mind, all the recesses, you're off into la la land, and everybody around you thinks you're in la la land. Go find somebody who absolutely sees a path to your accomplishment and actually can see how you could 10x that. Because that's your growth zone. That's where you're able to get out of the small game you're playing. And it doesn't matter if you're making 100 million and you think you're crushing it. Go find somebody who's making 100 billion. Go find an Elon Musk. Get in the person with it that thinks you can crush it way bigger than what you think currently. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here, is because I really believe and I'm passionate about this idea of helping people play a bigger game in your terminology, but live a legacy. Live it today. Don't wait until you die and hope that you're remembered the way you want to be remembered. Live the way you want to be remembered. Make it a daily course of action, and you'll be surprised at where you end up in a few years. So thank you so much, Markus, for coming on. I'm super excited about this conversation. Go ahead and share with us where you started, like early childhood. How did you get to where you are, and what connections, what questions drove you to becoming the successful individual that you are today?
Oh, awesome. What an intro, Sam. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I love it. You and I definitely speak the same language, man. You know, I want to just highlight something you said right away. My biggest belief, one of the things I would give, top thing I would give a younger version of myself is spend time in rooms with people who think bigger than you. Because it's so true. You spend time with them and you have these big thoughts, but then you imagine being in the room right now with Mark Cuban and you're like, oh, Mark, I've got this idea and it's going to make me like $1 million, Mark. And you'd be embarrassed to say it, right? Because he's like, hey, that's great. That's really great. No, you know, I'm not trying to put you down, but I don't talk about $1 million. I talk hundreds of millions. And just being around that and listening to the way he talks to somebody else, you go, oh my goodness, I can think bigger too. Most successful people were not born super geniuses. We're not born with some brilliance in their mind that we don't have. And for what it's worth, I was certainly not born with any of that stuff. One of my arguments that I love to give people is I was born with no leg up. In fact, a lot of my history would show I should not be successful at all. And it's because of that that I am. And it's because of that that I can help others go, hey, if you don't like the path you're on, you don't like the game you're playing right now, play bigger. If you believe there's something more for your life, there absolutely is. And you are the only one getting in the way. And you're the only one who can make a difference. So let's do it. Let's leave a legacy. Let's change our lives. Let's ask bigger questions. And let's start right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go into your childhood. How are you say you're not given anything. I think a lot of people can relate to that on the surface, but dive into that. What does that look like for you and your family scenario?
So let's go. I grew up in a bit of a messed up family, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. When the divorce happened, I was 7 years old. My father was already kind of out of the picture, but then he was really out of the picture. And what was really sad is my mom now had to go back to school full-time and work full-time to provide for us. So on that day, I lost my mom and dad. That sucked. And as a young man growing up without a father around, I let that be my excuse for everything. Why don't I treat women well? Well, I didn't have a dad to teach me. Why am I not a strong enough man? I didn't have a dad to teach me. It messed me up for so many years. And then things like my diet was a mess because I was feeding myself from the age of 7. Like there was so many issues I had and excuses I had, and I could have absolutely been the victim for the rest of my life. I played that victim card for many years and I hated the results. So when I was 15 is when I really started to ask better questions. When I was 15, my father popped back into my life and he said, hey, would you like to come on a trip with my new family and me? And of course I said yes. And on that trip, it was actually the first time I feel like God spoke to me and he said, Markus, where you're going, no one knows who you are. No one knows the life you have back at home, which, by the way, at this point, I'm 6'4", 120 pounds. Wow. So when I say my diet was bad, my diet was bad. And somehow, even at 120 pounds, 6'4", I was still chubby. Like I got like the worst physique, like bone rack skinny where you don't want to be bone rack skinny, chubby where you don't want to be chubby, zero confidence, zero self-worth. So if you're like, I can't relate to this guy, he's got this, he's got that. Oh, I had none of it. I had nothing. But on that plane ride, when I felt God say, hey, no one knows, you can leave all that crap behind. And what I had built up was what I thought the world wanted of me. And how many people right now are listening to the world or watching social media and comparing yourself and creating this personality, this persona that is not actually you. And holding yourself back, putting yourself in a little box. Don't be too loud. Don't be too confident. Don't be too skinny. Don't be too fat. Don't be too loud. Don't be too quiet. And we're put in this little box. And on that plane ride, I got off and I really felt it. I got off the plane and I was like, I'm going to be a different man. Who am I going to be? Well, I want to be a more confident guy. So right away, you go ahead, you put your shoulders back, you make better eye contact, you shake with a little bit more gusto in that shake. And that's who people accepted me as. I was a totally different person and I got unbelievable results. That's how quickly your life can change because it starts with a choice. But then the better question started. What actions do I have to take daily to become this man I want to be? So I wasn't faking it. To some degree, maybe I was embellishing or faking it a little bit until I made it. But I was willing to do all the work I had to do to become this version of myself, this better version of myself that got real results in life. And then I made it my life's journey to keep moving on that path, to create the habits I needed to create to gain the success I wanted to gain. So one of the greatest pieces of advice I can give you is this. Watch the people who are living the life you want to live. So I refrain too much from using the word success because it has such a huge, broad definition. but what success you see. So maybe you see someone who's a phenomenal husband and you want to be a phenomenal husband, or a great parent and you want to be a great parent. Watch them. What habits do those people have, and start mimicking them? And feel free to ask the questions. People love having people come up to them going, hey, I think you're a great parent. How did you do it? What are the things that you do? Because I want to be more like that. Or if it's in business, you see somebody doing amazing things, go ask the questions. Start with, hey, I think you're doing amazing things in business. What are some of the key habits that got you to where you are? And listen, and then take action. Everybody is a big consumer these days, but very few people take action. If you take action on the things you learn, you will radically change your life and you will absolutely stand out. Why? Because nobody's taking action. You take some action, you are immediately in the elite 1% of humanity. You do it consistently, you're in the elite 1% of 1%. So you want to have some confidence in the things that you do, that you will end up past the finish line, you will be ahead of others. Do the things that 99.99% of people aren't willing to do, and you do them every day.
Yeah, I completely agree. That doing things every day, consistent action. It's interesting to try and mentor somebody who doesn't understand consistent action into consistent action. And I don't know where I first learned consistent action, other than my childhood, where it was just you either did it or you didn't get certain things in the house. I mentioned earlier I'm the 7th of 11 kids, and it's just when you have that many kids, there's certain things that just have to be done every day. We had chickens, we had farm animals, and whether you want to feed the animals or not, you have to go feed the animals. Like that's just how it is, And so there's certain things that, regardless of how you feel about it, you have to do them. And learning those consistent actions is crucial. It's also probably one of the hardest things mentally to resign yourself to, is the monotony of consistent actions, because so often, especially in today's world, we want something new. We want the thing that's going to tip us over the edge. We're constantly searching for something bigger, better. And oftentimes the bigger, better thing is doing the simpler thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over until all of a sudden you have this better thing. But it doesn't come from doing a new thing. It comes from doing old things over and over and over and over and over and being consistent. And consistency is, you can't talk about that enough. And I like how you broke that up. There's the people who are taking action, but there's a lot of people who take massive action and then they're inconsistent. And then they take massive action, they go get inspired or motivated for a day, and then they're inconsistent. And then they go get motivated for a day and they're inconsistent. And that just never is going to work out.
No.
Long term. I'm curious. I want to go back to a few things that you brought up. Do you do a lot of public speaking or just podcasts? Or, I mean, obviously you've led companies, you've built companies, but I want to share this. I don't know if you're doing it intentionally or you're just trained at this point, but the way you started out that story is such a good line, right? When the divorce happened. Okay. Think about what that does. As you're listening to this, think about what stories do I have in my life that could grip somebody and want to know what happened, when the divorce happened. That's such a good line. But I'm curious for you, you mentioned that when the divorce happened, the next thing you said is, on that day, I lost both my mom and my dad. And that's another gripping hook. That's like, man, what happened? How does this apply? I'm curious, as far as siblings, did you have other siblings that also went through that? And how did everybody I'm the 7th of 11. So I feel like our family's a pretty good case study of like, we all went through very similar experiences and we got wildly different things out of those experiences. And then there's a few things that we all got the same thing. So I'm curious if you have other siblings and how did they all respond to the same experiences or same events?
Great question. And I think we are like a science experiment, to be honest. And I'm going to do my best here to give you the facts without, when my brothers and sisters.
We want to honor everybody. This is not to say anything negative about anybody, but it's It's a recognition of how the same, we just go through events. Everybody went through COVID. The whole world went through COVID. We all go through certain events and people react differently. And this is not a character assassination. This is not anything bad. No. But what the purpose of this podcast is, we want to find out what question was asked that became a different outcome of that, right? So we're not saying whether the outcome is different. Just like you say, success looks different to everybody. We're not trying to define what is the right action. We're trying to identify what's the question that needs to be asked that is the fork in the road, that changes that behavior, that changes the outcome. And so, yeah, if you're listening to this, Markus isn't going to poop on his family or anything, but we want to know, what is the separator? How do different people respond? Because maybe you're going to be like, man, I feel like I could have been Markus, but I chose to be one of his siblings. And that's not a good or bad thing, but what was the difference for Markus? And how could I start making those changes now? Because it's not too late. The highest income earning years of human life are age 60 to 70 years old. 70 to 80 is the second highest. 50 to 60 is the third highest. I meet with people all the time who they're 45, 50 years old. And they're like, it's too late for me. I can't become financially successful. I can't retire. I can't do these things. You are in the prime of your life. So don't write yourself off yet. And if you're 20 hearing this message, think of the jump start that you have if you take action consistently. So back to the original question, honor for everybody here, but I'm really curious about this for your family.
So 2 sisters and 1 brother, 3 years older, 9 years older, 10 years older. So I'm going to start with my brother because this is actually the funniest of the stories. My brother and I, we had almost no relationship up until 2 years ago. God really brought us together. And now
he was 17 when the divorce happened.
Correct.
Okay.
And at 18, he knocked up his girlfriend and he was out of the house.
Okay.
So this guy and I lived totally different lives and we had totally different childhoods. So in my 20s and 30s, when I would talk about, growing up poor, we always laugh at this one time because I posted something and it was, being poor was it was a sidebar of it. He calls me and he's like, what are you talking about? We weren't poor. What are you saying? Are you doing this for likes? And I'm like, what are you talking about? How do you not think I was poor? What part of it? Oh, I was there. I was like, hold on. When are you talking about? I'm not talking about when you were 13 and I was 3. How about when you were 17 and I was 10? And he's like, oh yeah, I wasn't there. And then we had this discussion and it was this crazy moment where he was like, oh my goodness, we had like the same players were involved, but it was a totally different life. And then now my sisters, being female, it hit them really hard and different. So, mom now focusing on school and work, dad being out of the picture, it messed them up in a totally different way. It messed all of us up for finances. Finances, it just so scarring. We always talk about the different traumas we have growing up. Financial trauma, in my opinion, is one of the biggest traumas you will have. It really changes how you look at the world. And so for us, and I'll speak for me, I saw my father who was starting to make money and he got to go on vacations. He got to do all these other things and it looked pretty good. And then I got to see my mom in constant pain over money. Anytime a bill, no matter how small it came in, it just freaked her out, made her sad, made her cry, ruined her life. So all I thought of as a young man was no money, terrible. Lots of money, good. And that really, that drove me for many years and in very much a negative way too. But at least I learned I got to have some work ethic because I will not be poor and I will not have kids and do to them. I don't want to finish that sentence. I don't want my kids to experience what I experienced.
Sure. And what's funny about this is out of the 11 children, by the time I was really coming of age, I guess you could say, my oldest siblings had kind of either moved out or we moved when I was 9 years old. And 3 of my siblings really, like, they either went to college or they stayed behind. They didn't really come with the family to Idaho when we left Utah and went up to Idaho. And they would come visit, but it wasn't like they would ever lived in Idaho with us. And so it was really fascinating in our family that there's like 5 families of those 11 children. There's the oldest 3 siblings that are kind of their own little cohort. And we're all best of friends at this point. My parents are still married. Everything's good. So this is not a negative thing. It's just how the generational, when you're mentioning like we all experience the same thing, but a little different. So my oldest 3 siblings, they have their own little family unit. And then the next 2, so then the oldest 5, that's its own family unit. And then the middle 5 are its own family unit, which is, I'm in the middle of, no, I'm the second youngest of that middle 5. And then from that, then you have the 3 in the middle, which is my brother's just older than me, and then my little sister who passed away. And then I actually removed myself from the next family unit when I was 14. I moved out and moved in with my second oldest brother. And so then Gabe and the bottom half of the family, they all built a bond that I didn't build with them. And then the bottom 3, they have their own little family. And we all experience different lives. And part of it is like my parents religiously, we grew up very, very religious at the beginning of the family. And by the tail end of the family, like religion was not a major focus in the family at all. And then there's like media. When I was born, my mom was still on kind of this kick of like, to put in perspective, the old big box TVs with the antenna, she had cut the cord off of that and put a female end on it. And she would carry around a 6-inch male end. And you only watch TV on like 2 occasions a year. Very like anti everything. And now if you go to my mom's house, she's got a projector in one room, 2 big like 80-inch flat screens TVs across her bed, watches TV. Like, and it's just like the whole world changed. Grew up homeschooled. The public school system was the devil. Now my mom is a lunch lady. My dad's a janitor at the public school across the street. Just like such this like massive shift in what was inculcated into us as children. And yet the values of hard work, the values of what it means to be a Knickerbocker and what that name meant and in the community, service, contribution, all of that, I think all of us got. But there's definitely some just different perspectives on life. Yeah. Throughout those generations. And so it's fascinating to bring that up. I think one of the things you said is financial trauma is the biggest of life. And there's rich people who don't believe, I would say, let me put it this way. Pride and Prejudice was one of our favorite movies growing up. We'd watch it every Halloween because that was another holiday that we just like didn't celebrate. But we would watch Pride and Prejudice, a long 8-hour version, BBC version. And it's so interesting. There's a lot of people who don't have financial resources who think that somebody with money would never experience financial trauma. And they hear, I'm going to use Donald Trump as an example. He's like, look, my dad didn't give me anything. He gave me a small loan of $1 million. And for you might think, that's stupid. What do you mean a small loan of $1 million? Right? But if your dad's a billionaire and he gives you literally less than like 0.1% of his wealth and says, yeah, go figure something out. That's piddly. That's nothing compared to how you were raised. That's like a spit in the face of how you were raised. So yes, it's large in comparison, but that same traumatic, dude, you built this and you gave me nothing. You left me high and dry. That same thing drives somebody at every income level. So just because somebody has more zeros on the end of their small loan of 0.1% of their family's net worth, it's still 0.1% of your family's net worth. It's still a dramatic nothing comparatively. And so I think that's huge. Bring that up, that financial trauma drove you. How did your other siblings who maybe didn't get that same catalyst, maybe they got a piece of it, but how did it impact them not having the same perspective and catalyst that you had out of it?
It's a great question. I'll tell you about one of my sisters, and I won't name her. Sure. But I always thought my dad did like a social experiment on the 2 of us. And I'm so happy that I got the end that I got. Of course, when I was growing up, I was pissed about it. But essentially what it looked like is he is going to get nothing. She is going to get taken care of. And I'm watching it going, are you freaking kidding me? Like she would ring up a credit card bill, couldn't take care of it. He cleared it. And I'm like, what? I want I want $50 for something, and you're saying no freaking way. I wanted $300 as a loan to go to school, and he charged me a high interest rate. I'm grateful for that now because I understand what it means to have an interest rate and what it means to pay back a loan. And unfortunately, she never figured out money. And I'm not saying it was just this one experiment, but kind of makes sense that that's a pretty big experiment to do on somebody. And then they never figure out money. So I got to watch this. And now as an adult, I'm like, well, I know which way I'm going to teach my kids. I won't be so harsh on them, but I know I'll never just pay off a credit card bill. I'll be like, oh, whoa. No, one, you'll never get yourself into that. But two, if you do, I'll hand you a shovel to help you get yourself out. But yeah, I'm not taking care of your problem.
Yeah. The expectations are different. And that's one of the things that I find fascinating as well, is coming from this experience. We all want to do, as you said it earlier, we want to give our lives, our children better lives than what we got. Because, and this took me a long, long time to realize that what I got was actually great. Because there's that level where you're like, you still have a little bit of resentment. Like, man, why didn't they just do this? We were driving down the street the other day because my kid, anytime we go to this grocery store, well, I want this, I want that. Every child wants that. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. We're not buying that. We're not paying money for that. It's not worth it. No. And he's like, well, when I have my kids, I'm going to let them buy whatever they want. I was like, oh, okay. Let's see how that goes. You're going to have some spoiled, rotten, miserable children, right? Because it's just like people who grow up with no concept of value really suffer. And that's actually another thing that I highlighted in the video that I just did was talking about, I take my kids around, we knock the neighborhood and we sell candy bars or bread or whatever we're going to sell. So they can pay for their sports. Nice. And they'll earn $100, $200, whatever, to pay for their sports. And it's not that we couldn't financially pay for that, but they need somebody to believe in them that they can go and actually make that change and provide value at a young age, at 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. There's still a lot of value you can provide to the world, and that other people will exchange their value for that if it's valuable enough.
So good, brother. Hey, can I share a fun story with you about something similar I did with my kids?
Yeah.
So one of the first big businesses that I sold out of, exited out of, and got a really nice paycheck. I wanted to celebrate with my family, obviously, and I want them to celebrate too. So, I wrote my kids a little check, and they started their first checking account. And they were so young, they didn't quite understand, but they were like, oh, this is pretty cool. And oh, this is a cool amount of money and awesome. Can't wait for dad to sell his next business. So the next big thing that I have, and it's this big real estate deal that came through, and I go, so I don't want to just write my kids a check. I'm going to screw them up, with doing that. But I still want them to celebrate with me. So this is what I came up with. I said to them, for the next 30 days, however much money you can earn, and I mean earn, I want you to start a little business, do whatever you can earn, I'm going to put a 0 at the end of it. So you need to go out and work your butts off. And now if you start a business, I'm not giving it to you on your sales. I'm giving it to you on your profits. So I need you to learn, what does it cost to make these things? What are my returns? It was unbelievable how well this experiment went. It was 3 days and they had a artisanal hot chocolate business. They were making these beautiful hot chocolate packets, single serve, with the marshmallows and the chocolate shavings and the ribbons, and it was beautiful. And they went door to door selling hot chocolate. And I encouraged them. I supported them. I sometimes took them out and stood at the end of the driveway, but I'm not doing any of that. I'll coach you. I'll support you. I wanted them to get some no's, and they did. They got rejected. How do you deal with rejection? They learned from these things, and they went out without me many times. They profited over $320.
That's awesome.
So I put a 0 on the end, and they got to split $3,200. Do you know how freaking awesome that was? And awesome as a parent, that how many lessons they learned in that. about rejection, about going out there, selling door to door. They went in the rain. They went knocking on doors when people weren't answering their door. They kept going when people were giving them a no. They learned about supply and demand. They learned about cost. They learned about Excel spreadsheets. It was amazing. And sure, I had to fork out a few dollars, and people listening might go, well, I can't do that. Okay, but you can do something to teach your kids the same lesson. And that was so valuable. And now just that fight that we're doing against being entitled. Kids are so entitled these days. And that is the number one thing I'm trying to fight against. I want to raise kids who are not entitled.
Yeah, it's interesting. We say kids, but there's been a lot of discussion along different groups of mine about what is a millennial, what is a Gen Z, whatever. What are these generations? Because we say kids, but millennials are almost 40 years old now. Okay, wow. And that mindset, that entitled mindset, is even in that, like, up to 40-year-olds who are still waiting for somebody to give them a job, waiting for somebody to provide for them, waiting for this because they're entitled at that level. So when we're saying kids, it's really a mindset. In fact, there's a whole generational research team that says actually the millennials is no longer a generation, but a mindset. And that the millennial mindset has infected people all the way up to the baby boomers, that they're there waiting in retirement thinking, why isn't the government paying me?
Yes.
Why they've adopted this mindset of, I don't need to work for something, it's going to come my way. And so I think the biggest thing is teaching our children to do that. And I know for me, I started working when I was 6 years old for my first $50, mowed lawns with an old Snapper red lawnmower, no bag on it. The grass would shoot you right in the face. But I didn't care, I got to play soccer. And so teaching those skills, I think it's absolutely crucial to pass that on. And maybe you don't have the ability to put a zero on the end of it, but there's two sides of this. When you accomplish something, and this is another thing I struggled with, I'd love to hear that was one isolated lesson. Some of the things I love to do, I love to travel. I like shopping, frankly. I love buying new clothes. I like doing certain things like that. But when you get to a certain level of financial success, you've got your siblings. So I'm sure you love all of your siblings. You care about them. You wish the best for them. You have your parents. There's a level of, okay, you've accomplished something major in your life and you want to celebrate with the people there. Being all at the top by yourself, especially not without your family, it's not that fun. But how do you allow them to participate in those celebrations without them feeling entitled? Like even with your siblings or with your children, once they're 18, you just go and make this major accomplishment and you want to go celebrate with them. How do you do that without them feeling like, oh yay, we're going to bandwagon this and we're going to ride on Markus's coattails, but still teach them the value of that?
Well, that's a really great question. So the way I look at entitlement, especially in the scenario that you're creating, man, if you're an adult, it's not my problem. It's not my problem. It's to solve. I'm not your parent. And so I'll invite you to celebrate with me. And if it shows up like, there is still that piece of entitlement of like, oh, I heard you did another business deal. When is the next party? When do I get this? And it's like, oh, let me correct you right there. Let me stop you.
You're now uninvited.
Yeah. I absolutely love celebrating with people, and you're so right. It's lonely at the top, like it is. And for everybody listening, just know that if you're on a path that you're going to be putting in the effort, you're going to change your life, you're going to change the legacy for your family. It is a lonely road. So find people that you like to spend time with who are also looking to change their legacy, because those are the people you're going to want to spend time with. Of course, I celebrate with my family still, but I have to be careful. I do. Anytime I spend a bit too much, the question kind of comes out of like, hey, well, I'm struggling with this and this bill, save the money from the party and help pay my bills. And I'm sorry, my answer is like, no, you don't understand. It's not a bills problem. It's you're just spending too much problem. You got to figure that out. Me coming in and giving you $50,000, $100,000, that won't help at all. That's handing you some fish without teaching you how to fish. And so I'm not that guy. And I've got to see that too many times in my life where people did that kind of thing. So I'm like, hey, if you want to have a conversation about your expenses and how to start getting ahead, let's have that conversation. But if the conversation is, Marcus, write me a check, that's also a really easy conversation for me to have. It's not happening.
Yeah, that's a no.
Yeah. So but the kids, I think it's so important. I have to be really careful. And a big part of it, I think, is just communication. People don't communicate enough. I always talk with my kids to go, okay, guys, I'm going to take you guys to a really fancy restaurant. We're going to celebrate. I want you to know, as always, I'm a little nervous about you becoming entitled. So when we get there, like, this is a rare occasion. So please don't act like entitled kids. I better see a lot of thank yous and pleases. And if I don't, that's it. We're not going to restaurants like that again. And my kids, I freaking love my kids. I'm so blessed with such amazing kids. They appreciate it so much. And I think that appreciation, that gratitude is what's really missing in the entitled kids. And so that's a key thing that we're constantly instilling and watching for. And I have no problem pulling my kid aside and being like, hey, I didn't hear enough pleases. I didn't hear enough thank yous. I didn't like the way you treated that serving staff. This is your only warning. If you do that again, we're not going to that kind of restaurant. Done. And they know me. I am such a hard-lined disciplinarian. If they've crossed that line and then it's out of our lives and they're like, Dad, we haven't done this or that for 2 years. I'm like, do you remember why? Holy smokes. Yeah, I remember why. Okay. So do you want me to give you another try? Will you change? Yes, I will change. And they know. And I've had that so many times where I said, hey, if you cross this line, that's it. Because if you don't set up those parameters, too many parents are like that. Well, but I love them too much. Okay, I'll let them go one more time. I'm like, no. I even explained that to my kids. I'm like, it's because of how much I love you that I won't cross this line. I've told you this is the way it's going to be. Because of my love, it's going to reinforce that line. So yeah, don't test me.
So I'm gonna throw a little side curveball again, just because I want to really explore this. I really appreciate this conversation. There's something to be said for like earning or working for something for yourself versus being compensated for it. And compensation looks different for everybody. So for me, I have something that I say that I stand by still. If you have a W-2 job, then you are by definition underpaid. You're providing more value to an employer than you're being compensated for, or they would fire you because the moment you start costing them more, assuming they're a good business owner, maybe they suck at being a business owner and they're going to keep paying you. Wonderful. You found a sucker. But yeah, if they're a good business owner, they're going to fire you as soon as that needle tips the wrong direction. So again, that's not an accusation. That's how you're financially being compensated. There is a lot of compensation that's not financial. And there's also a lot of value that's being added that's not financial. And I think there's a lot of sacrifices that are made that are not necessarily easily correlated to a dollar per hour venture. So for instance, you say, well, if you go do this, then I'll add a zero to whatever you generate. I think that's good. It's also, you're definitely giving them more value than they provided in the marketplace as kind of a bonus, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But what is the value of, and I'm asking this, I know what it is for me, but I'm just curious because I don't know how to financially compensate what it is for me. So the value of the emotional encouragement and support that a family puts in and the loss of hours of time with you as a business owner, there's certainly times where you are working more and there's a sacrifice or a investment of, hey, I'm going to go invest time into business right now, which means there's going to be less family time investment. Doesn't mean it's non-existent. Doesn't mean you neglect them, but there's times where you just have to spend more time focusing on one thing than others. That's just how it is. Yeah. Is there a realm of, okay, you didn't go and actually earn the money, but you were a supportive, loving, you asked me about my goals every day, like you kept me focused. And that is a value that's worth being rewarded financially, even though they didn't go make the money themselves. They put in that emotional support and energy that helped you work harder to make that money. So is there a way to financially compensate that? Or do you say, nah, that's just part of being my kid. You get to support me and my money's still my money.
I really like this and appreciate it. The answer is yes and no. So as far as just here's some money because you were so loving and you did lift me up, which by the way, my family absolutely does that. I don't like the here's some money for it because, and here's my argument, that's not going to happen in the real world.
Sure.
And you can almost picture these kids in their first jobs and being like, hey, but wait, boss, where's my bonus? I was extra nice to you this month. And it's like, oh, wait, what? However, what I do is we go on really nice trips. And I say, hey, I just want you to know one of the reasons we're going on this nice trip. And this is, again, where I love to over communicate. I go, one of the reasons we're going on this trip, we can afford this trip, is because you guys were so good to me. You guys were so good to each other. We created such a loving home that you guys are such a key part of, that now we can go to this amazing place because you were so good. I was able to work super hard and you guys were so respectful and loving and appreciative when I was putting in the extra hours. You didn't make me feel bad when I came home. You guys are so amazing. And here's how we're going to do it. And by the way, while we're there, I'm going to let you guys each choose one amazing event and, here's a budget for it. And so there is some compensation for it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. Because one of the things I decided when I was dating, and this, some people still make fun of me because I spend in my mind, based on my other people around me, I spend a lot of money dating to find a wife. Like from when I started really intently searching, spent over $70,000 over about 7-8 months period of time.
Wow.
I know you're like, I can see your face. You're like, that's a lot of money. It is, but here's the reality. I knew two things. One, I had lived most of my life waiting for somebody else to earn the type of life that I wanted so that I could go live my life with them. And I was like, this is lame. Because how do you find the person who's comfortable living the life that you want to live if you're waiting for them to all earn it? It's like it was kind of it didn't work out for me. So I was like, I'm just going to go live the life that I want. I'm going to invite the people that I want to spend time with into my life experience and find out who fits comfortably in the life that I want to live. And that ended up being rather, expensive on one side, but also I think it's the best investment I ever made because now I have my wife, Charlie, and she's the best wife out of any other wife ever in the world for me.
I love that, bro.
So it was a great investment. Like if I could make another $70,000 investment to say, look, I'm going to have the best wife ever. And that's the best investment I make in the beginning of my business journey, I scored. And I think that it was absolutely worth it. But I have seen this now that we have been married and we're going, it's like, that's a real thing. The people you want to spend time with, do you just pay their way or do you say, no, I'm not going to pay your way. You got to figure it out. And so I like the way that you've split that up. Hey, we're going to show our appreciation through experiences, not a check, not money, but through, hey, I'm inviting you on this experience because I appreciate you. And yes, I'm going to add this value into your life because this is life experience. This isn't money. Yeah, you still got your bills problem. That's going to be a problem when you get home too. Can you even come on this trip and figure out your bills? I'll cover the trip, but can you make your life work around it? And that is a very good lesson to learn. And all of these questions really, I feel like, center around how are we, I didn't know this was going to be the direction of the podcast, but I'm really grateful that we had it. How are we passing on this legacy of financial, but not really, I don't even want to say financial success or financial well-being, but a lifestyle of appreciation and of being responsible for the value that you're providing. Because it's not even about money. It's about, are you being responsible with the impact that you're having, or are you just allowing it to happen and hope that it turns out okay?
I love this. I will boil that down into one word, and we're speaking the same language: being intentional. Mm-hmm. I'm such a proponent of being intentional with everything we do. If you're not being intentional, it's just like what you said. You're just kind of allowing things to happen and hoping it's going to work out for the best. Show me where it's worked out for the best. When nobody put in the effort, when people weren't being intentional. It does not happen. If you aren't raising your kids, if you aren't putting in this effort, do you know who is? Social media, the news, the government. And let me ask you, Does social media, the news, the government, do you think they have your kids' best interests in mind? Not a chance.
Yeah.
So step up. You have to step up. You cannot just sit back, sit in the passenger seat and hope for the best. We've seen how that works out 1 billion times over. So step up and choose the legacy you want for your family.
Absolutely. And that's where it comes back to like playing a bigger game. You can get by in a small game and you're going to have a small life. And again, there's no shame in that based on whatever you believe. I'm not shaming you for choosing that. No. I'm not judging you for choosing a small life. Absolutely. For me, I would feel unfulfilled if I chose a small life. And so stepping into a bigger game, it has to be more intentional. I made a big-ish commitment, which really is like kind of funny, but the turn of the year, I decided, I'm going to do something that I've never done before. And it's not a lot. I'm just going to do something that I've never done before. And I'm going to start reaching out to 30 people a day, 30 phone calls a day, which is like, wow, it's really not that much though. It takes about an hour and a half to make 30 phone calls a day. Just like outreaches to people, whether it's cold contacts, new contacts, old contacts, doesn't matter. And if you reach out to 30 people a day, at least in my profession, what I do, 30 people a day, I went from basically having nothing going on, for lack of a better word, to being able to produce in 6 weeks the equivalent of $100 an hour of $360 hours worth of work over 6 weeks. After the first 180 hours, I had helped one person and I made the equivalent of $10 an hour after the first 180 hours of work. But I kept going. And this goes back to the daily consistent action, right? If you're just doing a big action, it doesn't matter. But if you go to the daily consistent action, 30 calls every day, well, the first 3 weeks, you might think, man, this sucks. $10 an hour? No, that's not enough, right? And you're right, it's not enough. But the next 3 weeks, my income went from $10 an hour on average to $100 an hour on average. And a lot of the work that was done in those 6 weeks hasn't even paid out yet because the business cycle is 4 to 6 weeks behind. And so when you think about the daily compounding of effort, it used to be a little bit crazy for me to think, how do I make $500,000, $1 million a year? Okay, that seems big until you do the daily consistent actions. You're like, really? For you to go make $1 million a year, you got to call 30 people a day. Like if it was that reduced down to what you have to do, your daily action has to be 30 people a day, or whatever business it is. You got to go knock on X amount of doors, or you have to be on X amount of podcasts, or you need to sing X amount of songs, or whatever it is you need to sell. You need to sell X amount of ebooks. Break it down. It's so much less than you think it is.
Yes.
It's so much less than you think it is. To make $1 million a year, you need 100 people to pay you 10 grand a year. Or you need 1,000 people to pay you $1,000 a year. Like, it's just like, what? You only have to sell 1,000 things at $1,000? You can pretty much sell a lot of things for $1,000 without ever even talking to somebody now. People will buy $1,000 thing offline without even thinking about it.
All the time.
But it seems so big and people are making $60,000, $70,000 a year, struggling, thinking, how are they ever going to make their life work? And it's because they're focusing on the wrong things. They're focusing on the outcome rather than what do I need to do on a daily basis. And that goes back to the first thing you said as well. Find somebody who's living the life you want, inspect their daily actions, and just take action on what that future self would do.
Yes. Brother, I love that you've broken that down. I want to encourage you, stay at this. You're already seeing that it turns into a hockey stick. So yeah, you're at $100 an hour now. It quickly turns into $1,000 an hour. And you're like, what? All I had to do is keep doing this. That's it. You just have to keep going. And this boils down to my original what if question for me. I saw these habits and I saw these things that I knew I needed to do to become the successful man I needed to become. And I just thought to myself, what if I did this stuff every single day? Mm-hmm. I'm confident it will turn into the life I want it to. And I think everybody already knows the answer to that question. I don't think there's anyone going, I don't even know what he's talking about. I couldn't imagine a single thing that I need to do that if I did it every day, it would change my life. Everybody probably knows 10 things. If you did these 10 things, but choose one of them, do that every single day. Put your full intention, full effort into it. Shocker, your life radically changes. No, it doesn't happen overnight. No, it doesn't happen in 2 weeks like they tell you on social media. But if you do it every day for a month, stop and go, how am I doing? Wow, it's actually going pretty well. How about 3 months? Oh my goodness, things are going really well. 6 months, 9 months. Holy smokes, I have a different life. What if I do another habit? What if I start stacking these things? And all of a sudden, you get to this equation that is not a surprise. Again, there's nothing about me that's like, well, come on, guys. I had so much money to start. Oh, and I had all these legs up in life and I'm super smart. None of that. I was average. I was below average. So you can just start doing these things. Make a choice today, commit to it and say, I am a person of integrity. I say I'm going to do it and I do it. Do whatever you have to do to make sure it gets done. Put sticky notes all over your life to get that one thing done every day. Put the alarm in your phone to go off 6 times a day. Did you do it? Did you do it? Did you do it? Make it nag at you so that it is easier to do it than to not do it.
Yep, absolutely. I'm just curious, out of all of that, because I mean, you've had years longer than I have as far as being consistent, doing the thing, doing what you know you need to do. Just so people can hear this, because again, it sounds fun to talk about it. When it really comes down to it, though, how many of those days, if you take 100% of the days, how many of those days did you want to do it versus you were thinking of excuses not to do it, but you did it anyways?
Excellent question. Yes. I would say, so it radically changes over time. In the beginning, yeah, there might even be more, like 30% of the days I wanted to go, 70% I really wanted to use an excuse. But then it just starts to change because you have to start focusing on what were the positives. How am I feeling about this? So let's talk about exercise, because so many people are like, I don't even know how to get started. And is it worth it or whatever?
Stand up, sit down 30 times. Your butt will be sore.
Just get started and recognize the value of it. Put the sticky notes, put the alarms, just get yourself moving. Go for a walk every single day. Go a little bit further today than you went yesterday. The days that you don't want to go and you push yourself to go and you spend time in your mind going, I am so proud of you for going today. Those are the best workouts because now you proved yourself. I am so disciplined. I am a man of my word. I said I would do it and I did it well. And oh my goodness, I'm starting to get the amazing results. And fitness will change everything in your life. It's not just so I can have a nicer body. No, how about so you don't get sick anymore? How about so you don't have to go to the doctor as much? How about so you like how you look in clothes, how you like what you see in the mirror? How about so you feel good always? How about so you have the energy to become the person you need to become in business? How about so you sleep better at night? You wake up with more energy in the morning. How many more of these do I have to go through? It is so valuable to get into fitness, to start living the life that you are supposed to live. And fitness will open a lot of doors.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Man, we're out of time, and it's unfortunate because this is a great conversation. But before I miss it, we have your book.
Yes.
That's on pre-sale right now, comes out in July. Tell us where we could go and get the pre-sale of that book. So when it comes out, we got it.
Thank you so much. So my book is called Play a Bigger Game. And it's all the mindset tools, the perspective shifts that I use to become the man I am today. And I give you challenges. And if you put the work in, if you try all these challenges, you actually do them, your life will change. That's my promise. It is such a great, simple read. It's not for scholars, or maybe it is. I don't know.
They
but
probably
I'm not a
read
scholar.
It too. They need to simplify their own dang life and just
That's right.
Do some
That's right. We
things.
keep it simple. So go to Amazon, go to playbiggergame.com/book. If you end up buying a few copies, there's a whole bunch of incentives for you to buy bulk. But man, if you just buy one copy on Amazon or anywhere where good books are sold, I so appreciate that. Yeah, the pre-sale is on now. It launches in July. It ships in July. And I just want to be part of your life. So if you guys reach out to me on social media or come find me at playbiggergame.com. If you like what you've heard today and you're like, hey, I'd love to spend some more time around this kind of thing. I'd love to spend time in a circle of people who are thinking bigger, who want to play a bigger game. We have a beautiful community that is so ready to welcome you in.
Awesome. I love it. Playbiggergame.com. You're definitely going to want to go check that out. I'm excited to read the book. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, honestly. I'm so grateful for your willingness to have it. Not everybody wants to open up and just be and share some of those intimate things. So I'm grateful for you, Markus, and for sharing your experiences, because it makes all of this possible and makes it better. Our goal here is to help people live their legacy, be intentional with their life. Don't let it passively pass by, but actively pursue greatness, actively pursue whatever it is that you want. Pursue it. Don't hope it happens, but pursue it. And so I'm so grateful that you were able to be here, excited for our future conversations. And yeah, just thank you so much.
Hey, the pleasure was mine, and I'm so grateful you had me. Great conversation. I love what you're doing. And anybody listening to this, will you please go and give 5-star review for this podcast? Sam works so hard. He puts together this incredible guest list. He is putting in the time. The least we can do is go give him 5 stars.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'll catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy Show.
Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.